We give a shout out to Joseph Hand and the Bongino Army. That pizza absolutely crushed this weekend. That was so good. So good. Yeah. And it was actually nice to have a bunch of NFL games on this weekend. Enjoyed those. Felt right. Hey, everybody, welcome to Vince on a Monday. It is so great, as always, to have you with us. We have a big show ahead. Amber Duke stops by the program. She's wonderful. You know Amber. We'll talk to her coming up. Also, we're going to dive into this horrific stabbing attack. A Ukrainian refugee murdered in cold blood, just executed on a train, a light rail train in Charlotte, North Carolina. We'll get into the details on what exactly happened there and why that guy should have never been free to murder anybody. It's all ahead on this edition of Vince. As always, so great to have you with us. This program is brought to you by our great sponsors, and that includes Hillsdale. You ever just want to turn off the news and ignore politics at all? I get it. It can be overwhelming. But here's the thing. We're all citizens of a republic, and the decisions that are made by our government affect our everyday lives. In order to be a good citizen, you've got to read and understand the United States Constitution. You don't want to be like Tim Kaine, who has no idea what's going on. No, you want to be an informed American. And that's why I'm so excited that Hillsdale College is offering a brand new free online course called The Federalist. The Federalist Papers were written primarily by two of America's most important founding fathers. That's Alexander Hamilton and James Madison. Together, they explain how the United States Constitution established a government strong enough to secure the rights of citizens and safe enough to wield that power. Hillsdale's online course on the Federalist includes 10 lectures, each about 30 minutes long. You can take the course at your own pace, and there's no cost to sign up at all. Plus, Hillsdale offers more than 40 other free online courses. You should do this. This Federalist course is awesome because you do find out the core differences between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, what they were arguing about, and how in the end, even the Anti-Federalists were able to score some big victories to make our country so much better. Right now, you can find out all about it at hillsdale.edu/Vince. Enroll there. There's no cost. It's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/Vince to enroll for free. hillsdale.edu/Vince. Yeah. Oh, Duck Goose says that they just finished the Federalist course from Hillsdale. Highly recommend. Excellent. Yes, thank you to Hillsdale. They really are awesome. And these courses are so good. So good. What's better than free? It's so great. And so thank you, Hillsdale, for that. Also, as we get started today, I want to offer a quick note of thanks. Last week at the beginning of one of the programs, I said, boy, my family really needs a pizza dough recipe. And sure enough, the Bongino Army delivered. Joseph Hand, God bless you. Thank you very much. Sent along a great pizza recipe. So we made pizza dough as a family, and I've got a bunch of it frozen still, but we started making pizzas on Friday, and it turned out awesome. So thank you to Joseph Hand for the wonderful pizza dough recipe. It came through clutch this past week. We didn't have to go out for pizza. We had great at-home pizza thanks to you, so thank you for that. Let me see here. We've got a lot to get to today. I do have Amber Duke coming up, as I pointed out, but I first want to focus on a horrific crime caught on camera dating back to August 22nd. Now, the scene of this crime is the Charlotte-Mecklenburg light rail system. This is in Charlotte, North Carolina. And it's a late night. This is after a long day's work. There's a young woman by the name of Irina Zarutska who boards this light rail train. She is a refugee from war-torn Ukraine. She was able to escape the hellish state of the war in order to come to the United States. And while here in North Carolina, she got a job working at a pizza place. And so her day is over. You can see her. She's still wearing the uniform from her workplace. She gets on board the train, and the guy who happens to sit behind her, little unbeknownst to her, is violent, schizophrenic, career criminal who, by the name of DeCarlos Brown Jr., 34 years old. And it leads to this horrific, fateful moment where he stands up during the train ride, opens up a knife, and then stabs her in the neck, murdering her right there on that train. Now, we have the footage of this, and the reason we have the footage of it is because it's been released by the local media, WBTV, out of Charlotte. They obtained this footage from the light rail system because, of course, there are cameras on board the trains, and these cameras are meant to help safeguard the community, to detect these kinds of people in the first place. And so the footage you're about to see all comes to us from WBTV. They made edits themselves. WBTV did. They prevent you from seeing the moment of contact between the knife and the woman's throat. They do not show you the actual murder. They show right up until the moment that he swings the knife, and then you're going to see footage beyond that as he's wandering down the train and begins taking his sweatshirt off, blood dripping from his hand, and people just not really reacting, just sitting there like zombies. Take a look. Here we go. Cut 1. Here's that nightmare footage out of North Carolina.
It's 9:46 p.m. You'll notice right away, this looks like any other ride aboard the light rail. People are doing what they do these days, keeping to themselves, scrolling on their phones as they ride along. The man accused in the killing, DeCarlos Brown, is in the red hoodies on the right side of your screen. He appears to be maybe a little emotional, perhaps a little agitated, but nothing disruptive. There's nothing that gets anyone's attention. About 30 seconds later, Irina Zarutska boards. She's wearing a hat and a t-shirt from a pizzeria, and she sits in the row in front of Brown. She has earbuds in and is looking at her phone. She too's just minding her own business. They ride along for around 4 minutes with nothing unusual happening. Then around 9:50 p.m., Brown reaches into a pocket. We've zoomed in on it here. He pulls out a pocket knife. No one notices a thing. Seconds later, he would stand up, and from behind, unprovoked as we stop the video, he would stab the young woman several times. She had no chance to defend herself. The attack was over in seconds, and when it was over, Brown walked through the train attempting to get off. Few passengers, if any, at first realized what had happened, until they noticed drops of blood on the floor. 90 seconds after the attack, a bystander rushes down to begin lending aid to Zarutska. She would die from her injuries. 30 seconds later, 9:52 p.m., 6 minutes into the video, Brown leaves the light rail.
Okay. There's a lot to react to here. I'll get to his criminal record and everything else in a moment. The fact that he is a violent schizophrenic. We'll get into the details. But I want to focus first on what, if you're listening to the audio podcast, what you just heard described. And for those of you watching on rumble.com/Vince, thank you. You can see the video here. And in all of this footage, what we learn, first and foremost, is that there was at least one man sitting directly to Irina's right side. There's an adult man. It looks like behind him, I believe the person who was behind him was a woman. But there is a man there during all of this. The idea that there was no reaction just blows my mind. Nobody was reacting. There was no shouting, no screaming, no reaction whatsoever. Everyone seemed to be totally blasé about what had just happened. Now, it's obviously horrific. One might imagine that the reason you don't hear Irina scream or anything like that is because she was stabbed in the throat. That's just one of the practical and horrifying realities of the attack. But the people around, nothing, no reaction. And then he walks his way down the train, and there's blood dripping the whole time. Now, he would later go to the hospital for injuries that were sustained to his hand. There was a cut to his hand that apparently had occurred during the attack. I assume he cut himself as he was swinging this knife. They said several times that she was stabbed. How many times? How much stabbing was going on? At any point, could a person have intervened in all of this to stop him? He works his way down the train. People are trying to keep to themselves. They don't want to look up. They don't want to observe him. They don't want to acknowledge him. It's almost like in our society, people have just been straight up trained not to interact, not to engage, not to pay attention, not to intervene. It's a very sad commentary on the state of affairs. Also, you have to believe that part of this is the Daniel Penny effect. Daniel Penny is a Marine who in New York stood up to defend a train car that was being threatened by a man who threatened to do it harm. He took that man down and held him until authorities could get there. That man would die during this. And Daniel Penny was accused of choking him to death. That went to a nationwide trial where the video footage came out. The whole country was obsessed with it. There was an effort to destroy Daniel Penny's life for being the guy who intervened to stop violence aboard a train. That trial worked all the way to the end, and he was acquitted of any wrongdoing. But the fact that he went through it was a symptom of the media's desire to crush him. That was a racialized event, of course. Daniel Penny, a white man, a Marine, taking down a black suspect in that case. And so the media went crazy for it. This is a case where the media is not really talking about it at all. Or to the extent that they are, they're being dragged kicking and screaming into talking about this. This horrific attack took place on August 22nd. The reason so many people are now talking about it, at least people on the right are talking about it, is because the video was released on Friday to WBTV. That's how we get to see it now. And the man who was arrested is DeCarlos Brown Jr. He's been charged now with first-degree murder in connection with Zarutska's killing. He was ordered this past week to remain in jail and undergo a competency evaluation, but this is not the first time that this guy has had a run-in with the law. In fact, Axios Charlotte, which is basically the Charlotte iteration of Axios' website, reported in days ago, September 4th, that Mecklenburg's DA, that's the Charlotte-Mecklenburg area, acknowledges criminal justice system gaps following light rail killing. And they go through some of the realities here. DeCarlos Brown Jr., a 34-year-old who has been diagnosed with schizophrenia and has a violent criminal history, meaning he's encountered the law a lot, and yet he was running free so he could stab this woman. He was just arrested this past month and accused in that fatal stabbing of Irina Zarutska. Zarutska's death raises questions about the effectiveness of the judicial system. How about the lack of effectiveness? And the community's failures to address mental health. Even Brown's mother has blamed the courts for allowing her son to be out in the community. That's true. Brown was just released from jail without bond in January for misusing 911. He claimed at the time to authorities that he had been given man-made material that controlled when he ate and walked and talked. His body was being controlled by a man-made substance, he claimed at the time. In July, Brown's public defender questioned his ability to proceed in his court case. The judge ordered a forensic evaluation. It was never done, and Brown stayed out of custody. He's now being held without bond because of the murder. His past convictions include armed robbery, felony larceny, breaking and entering, and shoplifting. So this guy has a long and violent criminal history, and yet here he is back in public yet again, released by a Democrat-run city that doesn't care about the well-being of the community and instead keeps releasing the same small subset of people that are committing all of the violent crimes to rain terror upon that community yet again. That's what's happened here. His mother was so scared of him that she contacted authorities and she had him involuntarily committed. He was only under observation for 2 weeks, and then they let him go. Take a look here. Here's cut 2, local media reporting on the suspect's mother saying, he's nuts, and this is horrifying.
His mother tells us she tried to get him help. She told us, "My heart goes out to the victim's family," saying what he did was atrocious, it was horrible, it was wrong. Brown's mother says she got an involuntary commitment order from the courts. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia, but he was only under psychiatric monitoring for 2 weeks. So like most families who need help for a loved one with mental illness, it wasn't adequate.
So then he was back out on the street. He was back out on the street again. Just like released in order to perpetrate more harm against the community? What is this? What kind of country do you want to live in? What kind of country do we deserve? I happen to think that a young woman who just finished a hard day's work should be able to get onto a light rail train in Charlotte, North Carolina, and successfully make it home without any harm befalling her. In fact, the way a country treats its women on public transportation is a measure of whether or not the country is safe. There are countries where men and women can't even share train cars because the women are too routinely sexually assaulted while on public transportation. We have to live in a country that's safe and secure. This is, in this case, literally insanity. A violent schizophrenic released on the community yet again. And for what? For what end? To demonstrate that you care, that you love him, that you're demonstrating empathy? You don't want the justice system to treat him poorly, perhaps because of his skin color? What is this? There's a lot of lessons wrapped up in this story. A lot of horrifying lessons wrapped up in this story. One of them is like, we need a criminal justice system that obviously works. There's a very small subset of people who commit most of the crimes in our country. If you lock them away, we stop so much of the violent crime. That's just true. That's a huge piece of this. Another one is the reaction of the people on that train. The fact that so many people sat there zombie-like, not responding to a public execution, really tells you that we are in a societal decay that we need to turn around and quickly. I think part of it was, if I had to guess, part of it was that people were making racial assumptions as they were sitting on that train. They were looking at a tall, lanky black man, dreadlocks, walking down the train, blood dripping from his hand. He's pulling his hoodie up over his head. He's taking it off. Everything about his behavior seems super bizarre. And I think my guess is what's happening on the train is people, regardless of skin color, black, white, or anything else, are looking at him going, I know that guy. I know that character. It's all downside. Whatever this is, I'm not going to ask him how he's doing. In a normal, healthy society, if you saw somebody bleeding from their hand walking down the train, sir, do you know you're bleeding? Are you okay? Do you need help? Nothing like that. Nobody interacts with him. Nobody. That is indicative of a low-trust society where you can't even engage with a human being who's bleeding out of their arm on public transportation. A low-trust and high-crime society. Yeah. And Charlotte, North Carolina has had a very bad run. Last year in particular, they had a rise in homicides of 40%, a 40% jump in violent murders last year in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's horrifying news. And it leads to the kinds of reactions that you see on public transportation in their system. Another piece of this is how do the rest of us respond to this? What do we do with this? Well, one way to even have any knowledge of this would be you would have the media tell the story. And the media are not telling the story. In fact, the only place that's really telling this story fundamentally is the conservative press. The conservative media are talking about this. The local media are talking about this. They've got the video footage to support that conversation. But what about the rest of the national press? There's nothing going on here. So the Media Research Center pulled the data on this, and they say, here we go again. The legacy media is silent on the brutal murder of the Ukrainian refugee in North Carolina. And Jorge Bonilla is a great writer. He highlights the following. The first mention of this crime on any kind of video media, per the MRC's research, Newsbusters, was during a panel discussion on the August 28th episode of Just the News. This is before the video came out. Just the News, Not Noise, on Real America's Voice. But this News Nation item, there's a News Nation piece, was the only and first standalone report on this horrendous story on a national newscast. ABC, CBS, and NBC had multiple weeks worth of nightly newscasts on which to air the story, but they didn't. Neither did CNN or MSNBC. Instead, the legacy nightlies chose to air such compelling stories as, quote, the Japanese field goal kicker at the University of Hawaii, the opening of Princess Di's time capsule, multi-day cycles on the Swift-Kelsey engagement, the growing Powerball jackpot, Haboob mania, whatever the hell that is, and the legal travails of Cardi B, among many others. But they will eventually get to this brutal crime, albeit kicking and screaming and omitting whatever key details that they think they can get away with. He points out that this is consistent with other crimes that we've seen. The murders of Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, Jocelyn Ungare, the woman that burned to death on the New York City subway, to name a few. They all went underreported by the legacy press because it made the Democrat regime look terrible. Each of those murders were a direct result of the Biden administration's border policies that allowed millions of unvetted illegals to stream into the country. Inevitably, immigration became a central issue to the 2024 presidential campaign. And it's not because the media told you the story. It's kind of due in part to the fact that they didn't. And the fact that those stories are very real and people are living them, and they don't need the media to tell them what's happening. But some people do. It's important we tell these stories. More on that in a moment, including one very high-profile individual who was completely unaware of this horrifying murder because the media have not been telling the story. That's in a moment. Before we get there, though, I want to thank the sponsors who help us tell these stories. That includes Jacked Up Fitness. More and more Americans are prioritizing their wellness and getting back in shape, but studies prove that strength training does so much more to help burn fat than cardio alone. I've been working with Don and the team over at Jacked Up Fitness for a couple of months now. And let me tell you, these guys do know what they're doing. Their all-in-one home gyms are already best in class. Trust me, I have one, and I love it. But now their all-new X Series takes home fitness to the next level. The Power Rack Extreme functional trainer lets you do hundreds of exercises. Everything you would do at the gym right from your spare room or garage. You want more? The Power Rack Pro X features a fully upgraded cable crossover system with articulating pulley arms for unlimited width combos. So you're going to hit every muscle group. And if you're new to this, there's no need to worry. They have a free Get Jacked Up video program. You just press play and you can follow along. No more excuses. Let's do this together. Every time I have people over to my house, they want to see the Jacked Up Fitness machine. Can I see it? And they're like, man, I got to get one of those. You do. They're phenomenal. Go to getjackedup.com. Use the promo code Vince and save 10%. That's getjackedup.com. Thank you to Jacked Up Fitness for supporting this program and fitness all across our country. All right. So the media are not covering this story. And you can see why. White victim, black suspect, the media won't cover it. In fact, the media will often go out of its way to suppress the fact that a black suspect was involved in any crime. How often do you see news stories where a suspect is described and they're at large, but there's no description of the race? Well, once that happens, you know it's usually a black suspect because the media invariably conceals information from you because they don't want you to have it. That's the way they treat it. It's awful. Just tell the truth. Stop with all of this stupid meddling. And so what we get is a media blackout on this story. Nobody's, by and large, covering it among the legacy press. Elon Musk retweeted this observation this weekend from Matt Van Swol. You know Matt Van Swol. We just had him on the program. And Matt said on September 7th, so this was Sunday, yesterday, 6:46 in the morning, here's a list of all of the news networks who have not covered the Charlotte, North Carolina story. New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, MSNBC, NPR, USA Today, Reuters, Axios, ABC News, and PBS, says Matt. That's it. So nobody's covered that video. None of these guys have covered the video. So their audiences, and let's be honest, as much as each of these news outlets are failing in terms of losing audience year over year, there's still a massive amount of people in our country who rely on those places to figure out what the hell's going on in the world. And they wouldn't know about any of this. They wouldn't know about any of this. So Elon Musk retweeted that to share that. Good for him for posting that. And the people who were unaware of this video, this horrifying murder, included the President of the United States. Here's President Trump last night standing on a tarmac responding to a question about this horrific stabbing. Cut 6. Here's the president. He's being asked about it.
On a Charlotte subway. You've seen this video, and do you have any reaction to it?
Yeah, and where was the subway? Was where?
She was in Charlotte on a light train. She was stabbed multiple times by a...
Horrible. No, I haven't heard.
Okay.
When did this happen?
It happened in August, but the video just came out.
I see. Yeah, I see the video. I'll know all about it by tomorrow morning. Okay? Thank you.
I'll know all about it by tomorrow morning, and I don't doubt him for a moment. Look, the president obviously is fully consumed with a never-ending schedule of things that have to draw his attention, clearly. But one of the reasons that the president wasn't aware of this is because there's been a virtual media blackout on the subject. We can't cover it. Now, the press constantly whipped the rest of us into a frenzy about all sorts of things that are garbage, hoax, especially when it involves race. The Michael Brown event is obviously one of those areas. Hands Up, Don't Shoot was a lie. The Eric Holder-led Justice Department determined that Hands Up, Don't Shoot was a lie. And yet that didn't stop the media from driving the country absolutely crazy and leading to all sorts of destruction in an effort to support the lie. And that's not the only case like that. You could look at the Jacob Blake case, where Jacob Blake is reaching for a knife inside of a vehicle. Police shot him. He survived that shooting, by the way. The media told all sorts of ridiculous stories about that. Oh, he's dead. He wasn't dead. The whole thing was crazy. And then inspired the country to go crazy again. The George Floyd riots were very much like this. You weren't even allowed to talk about the level of fentanyl inside of George Floyd's system. It was all about that nasty police officer, Derek Chauvin, killed him. He murdered him in cold blood. You weren't allowed to have any sort of nuanced conversation about what the hell happened. Why is that community out of control? Nothing. And what did that lead to? It led to the wanton destruction of American cities, burning, billions of dollars of damage. Businesses burned to the ground. Police precincts burned to the ground. Dozens of murders in the United States. It was completely outrageous. Did it improve the country? No, it made everything less safe, actually. And it drove our leaders into another fit of insanity where they decided that they weren't going to enforce laws anymore. They're going to have cops back off as some sort of ransom payment to the George Floyd rioters. And so now we get this video. There should be national outrage over this subject, completely. People should be going ballistic over this in constructive ways. How can we fix our communities? How can we enforce the law? How can we prosecute the bad guys? How can we lock away the violent and the criminal? How can we get rid of them? How can we take care of the mentally ill before they go violent against other people in the community? That should be the story, the reaction we get out of this. And yet the media is trying to prevent that conversation from happening as we speak. The people who want to fix this don't want to riot. They want righteousness. That's what they want. And so now, as usual, we start dragging the rest of the media into covering this. And Axios Today has finally covered this video being released. Now, I told you about the Charlotte Axios branch, which is fine. They covered the crime earlier. But this video and what it means and how it should actually make a better society, Axios has a piece today. Stabbing video fuels MAGA's crime message. Oh, so the story isn't how do we stop the crime? It's that Republicans are pouncing on video of a horrific crime. MAGA influencers are drawing repeated attention to violent attacks to elevate the issue of urban crime. Yeah, no shit. Of course people are. If you see a violent crime happen, you go, hey, there's a violent crime. What are we supposed to do? What are we supposed to do? And accuse mainstream media of undercovering the shocking cases, which is true. They're not merely accusing. It's supported by the evidence. The rising number of surveillance cameras in public spaces, Axios says, including on Charlotte's light rail, has become a big accelerant in these cases. Well, yeah, no kidding. Wasn't it the left that was demanding body cameras like 5 seconds ago? We need body cameras of all the cops because of all the awful things that they're doing. And then we get the body cameras, and it shows that the cops are doing their jobs, and now we're not allowed to see the footage? Axios says that the video is easily shared or leaked and can instantly pollinate across social media, a visual counterpoint to statistics showing crime decreases. Really? All right, so let's back out of this for a second. Visual counterpoint to statistics showing crime decreases. That's interesting. So what's going on in Charlotte exactly? Is crime actually decreasing in Charlotte? Is that really the story? Oh, that's weird. Here's a piece from, what's this outlet? Oh, Axios Charlotte. This is from April of 2024. Look at this. What Charlotte's homicide rate says about the city is the piece. What does it say about the city? Axios, whose publication just told us the crime rates are going down. Charlotte is one of the few major U.S. cities where homicides are rising this year, not falling, says Axios, the very same outlet that just told us, don't fall for the video, crime rates are going down everywhere. The prevalence of gun violence, especially among teens, could be a symptom of Charlotte's persistent upward mobility challenges. Charlotte has seen, you see this number? A more than 40% jump in killings so far in 2024 as of April 20th. That's not even halfway through the year last year, compared with the same period last year, according to Datalytics, a criminal justice consulting firm. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department recently reported 34 homicides in the first 3 months of 2024, a 31% increase over the same time frame in 2023. And, of course, the awful data goes on. So Charlotte is unusually out of control, led by Democrats. What kind of Democrats lead Charlotte? Well, we've got the mayor. The mayor is another crazy Democrat. Her name is, where the hell is this mayor's name? It's Lee something. Here's the mayor, the Charlotte mayor, Lee Viles. She tweeted the following thing out now 2 mornings ago, Saturday morning after the video went public. Mayor V. Lyles, Democrat that runs Charlotte, quote, "The video of the heartbreaking attack that took Irina Zarutska's life is now public. I want to thank our media partners and community members who have chosen not to repost or share the footage out of respect for Irina's family. This was a senseless and tragic loss. My prayers remain with her loved ones as they continue to grieve through an unimaginable time." And then here's the kicker. Like so many of you, I'm heartbroken. And I've been thinking hard about what safety really looks like in our city. Oh, she's thinking. She's doing a lot of thinking. I remain committed to doing all we can to protect our residents and ensure Charlotte is a place where everyone feels safe. Feels safe? How about is safe? How about a Ukrainian refugee living in Charlotte, North Carolina should be able to get on a train after her long shift at a pizza place and get home safely without some deranged, violent, schizophrenic, criminal career lunatic stabbing her in the neck and killing her? How about make it safer? How about stop thinking about it and making people feel like they're safer? We'll be joined in a moment by the great Amber Duke of the Daily Caller. We'll get her reaction to everything that's going on. And the media's awful behavior in the midst of all of this, in just a moment. Before we get there, I want to thank our great sponsors. Homeowners, when's the last time you checked on your home title? That's the legal record proving that you actually own your home. If your answer is never, then this message is for you. You see, scammers are stealing titles, and your equity is the target. Here's how it works. Criminals will forge your signature on just a single document. They use a fake notary stamp. They pay a small fee with your county. And just like that, your home title has been transferred out of your name. This is why I've partnered with Home Title Lock, so you can find out today if you're already a victim. Use my promo code Vince at HometitleLock.com, and you're going to get a free title history report. Plus, you'll get a free 14-day trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes, and if fraud does happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. Look, for most people, your home is your most valuable asset. You should protect it. You really should. Go to HometitleLock.com. Use the promo code Vince. That's HometitleLock.com. Promo code Vince. Paid subscription after 14-day trial ends. Cancel anytime. That's Home Title Lock. Thank you very much, Home Title Lock, for your support for the program. Also, Blackout Coffee. Man, I love my Blackout Coffee. Proudly the official coffee of all of us here at Silverlock. There's a reason for that. It's bold, unapologetic, America First coffee that's roasted fresh right here in the United States. It's not grocery store junk. Blackout Coffee delivers rich, high-quality roasts that actually taste like freedom. In case you were wondering what freedom tasted like, Blackout Coffee. And now you can set it and forget it with auto refill and recurring delivery. This means no more running out, no more watered-down backups, just your favorite roast delivered fresh on your schedule. Pick your favorite roast, how often you want it delivered. Not only do you get a discount, but you also get double the rewards and free shipping to your doorstep. My every morning starts with Blackout Coffee, and it just supercharges my day right away. You're going to love Blackout Coffee. It's delicious. Here's what you do. Go to blackoutcoffee.com/Vince. Use the code Vince. That's VINCE, and get 20% off your first order. Whether you're into bold, dark roasts, flavored coffee, or even instant, Blackout does have your back. Real coffee, no compromise. Blackoutcoffee.com/Vince. Get yours now. Blackout Coffee. All right. Also here to supercharge our day is the great Amber Duke, editor over at the Daily Caller. She joins us live in studio today. If you're watching, rumble.com/Vince. Hello, Amber. Good to see
Hi,
you.
Vince. Great to see you.
It's always good to have you here. Okay, this killing in Charlotte, North Carolina is horrific. I think that the full footage needs to be released. I don't think that the public reacts to things unless they're confronted with the actual horrors of the event. So, right, like 9/11 happens, we see the planes hit the towers. People are like, we have to go to war. We've got to fight for our country. You know, you see something like that. The George Floyd video is turned into this like really hyped, dramatized event that leads to riots across the country. I just want righteousness. I don't want cities to burn. I want cities to be safe. And I think it may be time to release that video footage. Do you think so?
Oh, I completely agree. The first time I watched it, you get to the part that is the most salacious.
Yes.
And there's a blurring effect, and then all of a sudden it jump cuts to when the suspect is leaving the train with the drops of blood dripping off of his knife. But we
Right.
don't get to see the actual savagery that he committed against this innocent woman. And I
Yes.
think it is really important for people to understand exactly what happened in this event, so that we do have righteous outrage, which spurs action and change.
Yes. So the media are not covering this to the point that even President Trump, who actually has a pretty, I would say, healthy media diet relative to most lefties, the president didn't even know about this last night. He was asked about it on a tarmac, and he said that by this morning, he'll know everything. He's going to look into everything to learn the story, and thank God he's doing that. But what do you make of the media blacking out this story? Why is that happening?
Well, the victim and the suspect are not the right skin color, I think, is the most obvious answer. But I think even broadening it out from that, what the media is doing with its nitpicking about crime rates and trying to argue that crime is down, which even in places where it is, it's only slightly down from when the pandemic happened. And if you compare it to pre-pandemic levels, it's still elevated.
Yeah.
But what they're doing with that is they are trying to make people believe that what they see with their own eyes is not actually happening.
Yes.
And the reality is, with a lot of violent crime around the United States, one of the big problems is that it seems more random. There used to be things that you could do to prevent yourself from becoming a victim of crime. Things like not walking alone late at night, not joining a gang, not traveling to certain parts of cities,
Yes.
right? Now, with crime spread out around metropolitan areas, on the subway, walking down the streets of Georgetown, it seems like at any moment you could become a victim.
Well, it feels very third world, for one. And the other piece is, like, I remember, you know, if anyone has ever taken a close look at crime data through the years, you talk to criminologists who study this for a living, they'll often tell you that the most likely person to hurt you is someone that you know. It's usually somebody you're familiar with, like a family member or a friend who you have a falling out with or whatever. But it's not usually strangers, or at least it hasn't been typically. And now we're getting more and more of these stories where people are just straight up either threatening or conducting attacks in public. And it feels like the social distrust is skyrocketing, and where people, I mean, even her, you can see in Arena, the victim here, I could see in her body language that she just didn't want any trouble. She was, she was like, her legs were crossed, her arms were twisted up. She's got her headphones in. She's like kind of just staring at her phone. The last thing she wants is to engage with anybody else on that train. She just wants to get home. And it all speaks to me that we're just living in a society that's becoming more and more distrustful of the people you encounter every day.
And I've noticed this when I occasionally ride the DC Metro. I usually drive everywhere, but on the chances that I do, when I run into tourists who are not from DC,
Yeah.
they want to talk, right? They're asking me questions. They need directions to where they're going.
For sure.
But everyone who lives in DC knows you keep your head down. You don't talk to the people around you because
Yes.
you never know what's going to set someone off. And I think the other important thing about crime rates, Vince, is that there are two basically national measures for measuring crime. One is the FBI crime statistics, which doesn't account for the fact that a lot of progressive cities are not prosecuting crimes,
Right.
are undercharging crimes.
Yep.
So things like assaults might be pled down to, lesser charges.
Yes. And they also, a lot of those cities don't share the data anyway with the
Exactly.
FBI.
But there's also the National Crime Victimization Survey, which is self-reporting from victims.
Right.
So that captures people who are either not calling the police because they assume that they're not going to be able to do anything, and captures progressive prosecutors who, like in D.C., under Joe Biden, Matthew Graves, not prosecuting 67% of crimes that were brought to his desk.
So this guy, so one of the other pieces here is that it's always the same people who commit all the crimes. It's a very
Yes.
small subset of the population that's
If you
conducting
locked
most
up,
of this.
if you locked up like a dozen people in DC, you would see crime probably drop by 50%. And that's not an exaggeration. The former DC police chief Robert Conti said that the average homicide suspect had 11 priors.
Yes, so this guy has, I believe, 14 priors. That's the guy who just killed this Ukrainian refugee in Charlotte. And among them are things like strong arm robbery. Like he's clearly demonstrated a lot of violence in the past. His poor mother, had him involuntarily committed because she was so scared to death of her own son. She got him involuntarily committed. He was only observed for 2 weeks, and then he was released again back into the public where he became a violent, homeless vagrant. And so in other words, like there are ways out of this. Like there's a very clear way out of this. Why aren't we doing it?
It's unbelievable. There's two very obvious things that you can do. One is make sure that people are held accountable for lower level crimes. So when you're 15 years old and you carjack an Uber driver and end up killing them,
Yes.
you should actually serve serious time in prison.
Yeah.
And what we find when you look at the backgrounds of these people is that it starts with things like petty theft, but it quickly escalates to
Right.
violent attacks. I mean,
Right.
this is sort of the MO for every career criminal is that the crimes get more and more severe as time goes on.
Yes.
The second thing, reopen the loony bins. When people are crazy and they have shown no desire to assimilate into polite society, when they're not getting treatment for mental health, they need to be kept away from people to keep the public safe.
Do you think the stigma around loony bins has disappeared, or do you think that we've reached a critical mass where people are like, whoa, wait a second, we have to open up insane asylums again? We have to get people involuntarily committed?
I definitely think we're getting to that point. And of course, this traces back to the 70s and 80s, where there were a lot of complaints about the conditions in insane asylums. Understandable. You don't want people treated like crap in there.
Yes.
But closing them down entirely led to states and localities having to foot the bill for a lot of these institutions.
Yes.
Most of them didn't have the money for it, so they all shut down.
No, there was, I'm trying to remember the name of the chat. Maybe you can help me out. But there was a famous insane asylum that Geraldo Rivera broke into, that he like jumped the fence. This is Geraldo's like origin story of how he became and then of course then we got to Al Capone's vault and all that stuff. But he jumps into the insane asylum. He goes in and he sees the conditions and he sees that people are apparently being mistreated, and he creates this big national drama around it. And the end result was that it led to massive closures all over the country of these lunar bins. Yeah, Willowbrook, exactly right. Thank you. Willowbrook on Staten Island. And yeah, he got a key, apparently. Somebody gave him a key. He jumped the fence. He went into the building and then covered it. And it was like this like crazy gonzo journalism kind of event that led to all of these closures. And also I think our popular understanding of insane asylums is too informed by movies or something.
Right.
Where you like
One
see
Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yes, like where people are just too misled into believing that there's no way you could possibly help a human being in this way. And clearly, a guy like this dude needs to be involuntarily committed. That guy needs a straitjacket. He's like muttering to himself on a train, opens up a knife and stabs this woman in the neck. Crazy.
We also have no media literacy in this country. I mean, just using the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest example, the whole point of that book and movie is that you're dealing with unreliable narrators. And yet now people have come to accept that everything that the crazy person tells you is happening is 100% true.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge part of it. But you asked earlier, what is the reason why we're not doing these really basic things?
Right.
I think there's two things. One of it is that you'll hear a lot from progressive and democratic leaders in cities that high crime is just a function of living in a city. They don't seem to understand that it doesn't have to be that way.
Yes.
That's a choice that we make.
Yes.
But the other thing is I think it's just a lot of white guilt. I think
They've racialized it too much.
they have.
Yeah.
They believe that someone who is of a minority race from a lower class background has no other choice but to do crime. And so if you over criminalize them, you're basically punishing people for being poor or black.
Yes, that's the claim. And yet that's not, functionally, these are not the kinds of crimes you're talking about. It'd be one thing if somebody was just stealing bread to subsist their family.
Which is what AOC thinks every crime in the country is.
Yes, but then anyone who takes a close look at this realizes that's actually fundamentally not the kinds of crimes that are being committed at all.
We also never ask ourselves, is poverty a driver of crime or is crime a driver of poverty? And there's a lot of studies out there that suggest actually the reverse is true.
That crime drives poverty.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. That's how you end up with all of the CVSs in town closing. That's how there's no functional small businesses.
How do you get a food desert? Well, Giant doesn't want to operate in an area where there's a lot of crime because they have to constantly staff the store with security guards
Yes.
or have limited hours. It's not profitable.
No, it's not. It's too crazy. So the other symptom of low trust societies are that nobody engages. So one of the other pieces on that train that drive me crazy is that not a single person stood up to stop the stabber. Now, I saw at least one man sitting right next to Arena, across the row from her. Apparently did nothing. Apparently just did nothing. And I can't believe that nobody saw this dude stabbing her. I get the other side of the train. Apparently they didn't realize it. You kind of see them looking around like, what the hell's going on? Nobody engages. What is that?
Well, not only is it low trust society, but we've also penalized people for stepping in. Daniel Penny is the obvious example.
Right.
He does the right thing on a train. He protects the fellow passengers. They actually praise him after the fact for saving them from this person who had gone insane and was threatening their lives. And yet he is prosecuted. And they threatened to throw him away for the rest of his life because he dared to stand up for his fellow citizens.
How much of this reaction from the media is filtered through the lens of, will this help Trump or not? Like, in other words, like, obviously they find their incentives in dramatizing anything where they can claim that a black person is a victim, and then they instantly try and make it a big national event. But on this one, it does feel like the perverse incentives that exist for the press are also that the last thing we want to do is breathe life into Trump's case that America's cities need to be rescued.
Exactly. And if Trump hadn't just federalized the police response in Washington, D.C., and moved into Chicago, I think we would have seen at least a little bit of coverage from the mainstream media. But they don't want to say that Charlotte has a crime problem because that could encourage Trump and his supporters and even normal Americans who may not support Trump but realize that crime is bad to go into Charlotte next.
Yes.
That's the last thing that they want is a victory for him.
So what comes next in all of this, do you think? What is our path out of this? Or is it only going to get worse?
In a lot of ways, it has to get worse before it gets better. But I think that the tables are turning. In the past 2 election cycles, we saw that crime was a much higher priority issue for most voters.
Yeah.
And they weren't citing that to say that they want another Soros prosecutor in their neighborhood to let people off the hook. And one of the most effective ads, just going back to the 2022 midterm elections when Senator Ted Budd was running in North Carolina, his team early on was focused on cost of living issues, right? We had Bidenflation. They were cutting ads in the grocery store of him buying apples and bananas and showing people how expensive they were. Didn't really move anybody. Race was really tight. They pivoted to crime, started talking about how Sherry Beasley, as the AG, was letting pedophiles off the hook and preventing tracking of them. And all of a sudden, his poll numbers skyrocketed. So I think you're only going to see that accelerate with these really high-profile cases of just random attacks.
When you see it in your own community, that's when it becomes resonant. That's why so many people turned against illegal immigration in the big cities, because they saw, think what you want of Greg Abbott and have your criticisms if you'd like, but the Texas governor did send a lot of these illegals that were being dumped on Texas into all of those major left-wing cities, New York, Chicago. I'll get to Chicago in a moment. And as a result, the population was like, wait a second, I don't want this anymore. This is driving me absolutely crazy. And I think it opened up a lot of people's minds to see it exist in their own life.
It was no longer an intangible. It was something that really affected them. If you were in New York City and you walked past Roosevelt Hotel, you saw the reality of illegal immigration and what border states had been dealing with on their own for decades. Finally, it was in your own backyard and you couldn't pass the buck to somebody else.
Yeah, okay. How's the Daily Caller doing these days?
It's doing great.
Okay.
Thanks for checking in.
I check in every so often. I'm supposed to be on the editorial call, but I'm there not often enough. And then they're like, hey, would you join this thing?
You're there in spirit. We always feel your presence.
I try to be. And I was all pumped about Reagan. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I just had this revelation. I don't care. I'll say it out loud. But the Reagan Reese interviewed the president 2 Fridays ago. You arrived at the Oval Office with Reagan to do the interview. This is Amber's situation. Amber's an editor at the Daily Caller. She shows up with Reagan, and somebody at the White House, I don't know who, but somebody made the decision at the last second. No, just Reagan, just one person, not 2. And so poor Amber gets left outside the Oval Office, and they're like, hey, sorry, you can't come in. How close did you get to the Oval Office?
I could hear Trump. I could hear Trump. We were sitting on the couch just outside. Yeah, and I definitely did not call my husband through tears on my walk back to the office. That definitely did not happen. I would never do that.
What a
No,
nightmare.
it sucked, but I'm so happy for Reagan. She did an amazing job, and
did.
especially to go in after something like that, derails your plans at the last second and still crush it.
Yes.
Just shows how much of an all-star she is.
She did crush it, and I'm glad you seem to be feeling better as a result of all that. That is so annoying, though. Imagine being
So
that
close.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. The reason I just brought it up and I just accidentally blurted it out is because this is the first time you and I have talked since then.
That's right.
And I was like, oh yeah, that. Oh shoot. Anyway, keep up the good work.
Thanks, Vince.
Thank you. See, and she's in good spirits. She didn't go completely crazy over that. Thank
No,
you.
no loony bin for me.
No
At least
loony
not
bin
yet.
for Amber. No, she's well adjusted. Thank you, Amber.
Thank you.
Great to see you. All right, so that's the great Amber Duke, and yeah, it is. It's just crazy what's happening. So Amber and I were just talking about Chicago and what is taking place there, and the president had an amazing moment this weekend where he posts to Truth Social that Chicago's about to find out why they've renamed the Department of Defense to the Department of War. There is. Let me share with you the original post first. This is Trump's post to Truth Social. Fellas, if we can put this up on screen, rumble.com/Vince for the video show. Here's President Trump. It's obviously a screen grab of Twitter, but this got ignored entirely by the press this weekend. It said, I love the smell of deportations in the morning. Chicago about to find out why it's called the Department of War with 3 helicopter emojis. And then there's an Apocalypse Now parody. It says Chipocalypse Now, and it's President Trump. He's got the hat on, and he's with the aviator sunglasses. There's helicopters flying over Chicago. It looks awesome. So this is the post. This is so funny. This is the post that the president put up this weekend. It's just a screen grab of a tweet. And I was like, whose tweet is that? That first of all, they deserve credit for this. And I found it. It's from Next News Network. And here it is. This is their original tweet. I love the smell of deportations in the morning. Chicago about to find out why it's called the Department of War. And they put up the Chipocalypse Now parody. So they deserve a lot of credit for that. There they are. So it's just a funny tweet. And it's a clear sign that the president of the United States is about to be enforcing the immigration laws in a big way. He's staging troops at a nearby military base there and wants to send everybody in to conduct these mass deportations in Chicago, which desperately needs the support. They need support in a number of ways, including with addressing illegal immigration, as well as the crime problem that's going on in the city. And already you've got the mayor of the city, Brandon Johnson, the least popular BJ in America, 6% approval rating. And you also have the governor of Illinois, Jelly Belly Pritzker, coming out and saying that if Trump enforces the law in Chicago by deporting illegals, he's just going to make us riot. And when we riot, then he's going to send the National Guard in to enforce the law against the rest of us. Well, here's a tip, fellas. A little fun fact. I'm going to give you a secret cheat code to how to deal with all of this. Don't riot. Don't riot, and everything will be fine. And the president should send the National Guard in, obviously, to address the crime problem in the city. So this hilarious social media post, I love the smell of deportations in the morning, led to this hilarious moment on CNN where Jake Tapper asked border czar Tom Homan this weekend, is President Trump really planning on going to war in Chicago? Take a look. Cut 3. Here we go.
Is President Trump planning to go to war in Chicago?
Look, I think it's worth being taken out of context. If I say we're going to war, we're going to war with the criminal cartels. We're going to war with illegal aliens, public safety threats that rape children, that raped citizens, that committed armed robberies, that distribute narcotics that kill Americans. We're at war with the criminal cartels, and Governor Pritzker protects criminal, illegal alien, public safety threats every day in that state, along with Mayor Johnson. We proved that. The first week of the administration, I went to Chicago. I started an operation there. The first day, we arrested 9 sexual predators, most of them child rapists. We arrested 9 members of TDA. Several of those TDA members had a pistol, an illegal pistol with a switch on it, which makes that pistol fully automatic. We arrested 2 illegal aliens that had a homicide conviction. That was the first day in Chicago. So, President Trump and this administration, yeah, we're at war with the criminal cartels and those who want to murder and rape the American citizens. You're damn right.
God bless Tom Homan. God bless him. So notice, I'm gonna tell you something here. I'm gonna take you inside the rhetorical decision that Tom Homan made. He didn't reject the war thing as merely, oh, it's a parody. Oh, he's just joking around. Stop taking him so seriously, whatever. We're just going in to enforce immigration. He actually embraced the president's language here, which, again, is just a screen grab of somebody else's parody. They're about to find out why it's called the Department of War. And he said, oh, yeah, no, actually, we are going to war, Homan said. Yeah, we're going to war against the cartels. We're going to war against the illegals who are destroying the city. We're going to war against the sexual predators. When we go to war, we do it on behalf of the American people and their interests. You are damn right that we're going to war. He didn't back away from it. He dove right in. And he popped Jake Tapper with a how you doing. Did you hear that? That was Homan this weekend. He hit him hard with the how you doing. Justin,
how you doing?
Signal. There it is. The how you doing? So Tom Homan comes flying in off the top rope. I love it so much, and he's right about that. And there's a media framing here that is so completely dishonest, and it's true in all of the law enforcement stuff in D.C., and it's true on immigration enforcement. Have you noticed the way the left talks about this? They pretend that immigration enforcement means that American citizens are being attacked by our government. It's a game of pretend. It's a flagrant lie that they're telling. That's not happening. American citizens are not being attacked. Illegal aliens, especially violent ones, are being deported from the country en masse. That's good news for the country. And the media, if they were telling the truth, should be warmly embracing that and telling you the good news. But they're not. They're opposed to it. They want to keep the violent criminals here. And so when you get a post like Chicago's about to find out why it's called the Department of War, Chicago should be singing the president's praises. And there are people in Chicago, my guess is also in our chat right now, who completely support the president of the United States. Any of you in Chicago, chat? Any of you in the outer suburbs of Chicago who are watching all of this, who live close to this chaos, who want it to end, who want the president to intervene? Because I keep seeing actuality after actuality, person on the ground in Chicago saying, yes, Mr. President, please, I beg you, send in your support. We just had an alderman, one of the elected officials in Chicago, on the show this past week. You probably saw that. Go check out the old shows. We've got it up. Where he says to me, yeah, we desperately need the president to come in. Send in the National Guard. Send in the National Guard. Yeah, we've got quite a few people in the chat from the Chicago area right now responding. It needs to happen. The city needs to be rescued. And I saw this weekend there are some media outlets who are asking President Trump, or trying to raise this specter that, oh, Trump's not going into the Republican states. Why isn't he doing it there? There's violent crime in the cities in the Republican states. And when they say that, what they mean is places like Tennessee, where Memphis is out of control. The crime is awful there. That's a Democrat-run city. And they intentionally misframe this. They pretend like, oh, it's the Republicans who have led to this chaos. No, it's the Democrat-run cities that are out of control. And the president should do everything he can to intervene. But the last thing he wants is more of these murders in that city of Chicago. So he wants to confront that, and he will. God bless him for it. Before we go today, I have one more piece of information I want to share with you. This was a big stunner going into the weekend. Actually, I'm not that stunned at all by it, but it was the first time we've heard anybody talk about it. You know, the Jeffrey Epstein saga? The Congress is still trying to release all sorts of new information that they can about Jeffrey Epstein, all the information that the government has had, so they're busy doing that. Good for them. They should. But Speaker Mike Johnson was asked about the Epstein saga. The left is, once again, in its interest of only lying to you in order to hurt Trump, is trying to suggest to you that somehow Donald Trump was a child abuser. That's the thing that they hope for the most. They really hope that there are child victims of Donald Trump. They don't care. They'll just lie to you anyway. They just want to take back the White House and the Congress. Speaker Mike Johnson revealed this weekend, on Friday, that President Trump was not merely the guy who helped kick Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago, is not merely the guy who lawyers said was very helpful in going after Jeffrey Epstein and how he had victimized these girls. It turns out, according to Speaker Mike Johnson, Donald Trump was also an FBI informant. This is the first we're hearing about this. Take a look. Here's cut 5, Speaker Mike Johnson.
He's not saying that what Epstein did is a hoax. It's a terrible, unspeakable evil. He believes that himself. When he first heard the rumor, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. He was an FBI informant to try to take this stuff down. The president knows and has great sympathy for the women who have suffered these unspeakable harms. It's detestable to him. He and I have spoken about this as recently as 24 hours ago.
That he was an FBI informant? That was never revealed in public. The president's helpfulness to the lawyers representing the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, that's been reported. The media don't talk about it. The president kicking Jeffrey Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago, that's been reported, but the media don't talk about it. That's new info. I follow this pretty closely. That's new info, which fascinating. So anyway, just more evidence that it acquits the president rather nicely here. And that word hoax, that's dedicated to all of the lefties who are trying to lead you away from improving your country. That's what the president means by that. As always, great to have you with us today on this episode of Vince. We'll do it again tomorrow. I've got the big national radio show, The Vince Show, coming up today. Check your local listings. We air that 12 to 3 Eastern live. You can go to the website, thevinceshow.com, to get the local listings, or watch us on Rumble, rumble.com/Vince. Always great to have you. The best audience anywhere. Good to talk to you today. I'll be back with you tomorrow. Up next, right here on Rumble, Steven Crowder. That's ahead.